Hi everybody, I thought I'd finally make a video after the Revelation 12 sign on September 23rd. Today is September 26th, so 3 days later. And I've been noticing some videos out there about the rapture occurring on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, on September 30th. I don't happen to agree with this, but I thought I'd at least cover Revelation 12 a little bit more in detail than what I see out there. So let me just go ahead and read just Revelation 12 verses 1 through 6 and kind of go through it and decipher it. So in Revelation 12 verses 1 and 2, it says, "Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then, being with child, she cried out in labor and pain to give birth." So, almost everybody knows that in the Christian community that this was the Revelation 12 sign that was fulfilled on September 23rd, 3 days ago. And that fulfilled just verses 1 and 2. And then it goes on to say in verses 3 and 4, "And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems or crowns on his heads. And his tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth, to devour a child as soon as it was born." So let me break this down and just go and cover what the second sign is, in my opinion, and then the dragon standing before the woman who is ready to give birth. And so the woman, as almost everybody professes, and I agree that the woman represents Israel. And so if the dragon, which I believe is the beast system, which is to come, having 7 heads and 10 horns, so the government, the beast government standing before Israel. And I believe that is covered in Luke chapter 21, verses 20. So this is it says, "But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you know the desolation is near," and that's the abomination of desolation, which occurs mid-trib or the middle of Daniel's 70th week. Now, going on to read verses 5 and 6, it says in verse 5, "She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God into his throne." And so I had previously said that I thought, especially being a male child, that it was the 144,000, but I now believe that it is Christ, because if you look at the Blue Letter Bible, let me move this over a little. You see that the rod of iron is only mentioned 4 times in the entirety of the Bible. In Psalms verses 2, verse 9, it says, "Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel." And then 3 times in Revelation 2, where it says, "He shall rule them with a rod of iron." And this is talking about Jesus Christ. "As the vessel of a potter shall they be broken in the shivers." And so this is referring back to Psalms 2, verses 9. And then in Revelation 12, verse 5, which I just read, that she, which is Israel, shall bring forth a male child who is to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child is caught up to God into his throne. And then in Revelation 19, verse 15, it says, and out of his mouth," and they're talking about Jesus Christ, "goeth a sharp sword, and that with it he shall smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron." And who is them? The nations. And up here it says, "Who is to rule all nations with a rod of iron." So in all 4 cases, this is talking about the Lord Jesus Christ, not the church. I think another giveaway, it being a male child, the bride, the church, is feminine or female. And in this case, the male child is a male, not the church, which is a bride or a female. Then in verse 6, it says, Then the woman fled into the wilderness. So this is Israel, where she had a place prepared by God that they should be fed for her. That they should feed her there 1,260 days. And almost everybody in the Christian community recognizes that the woman flees into the wilderness during the middle of Daniel's 70th week, and that she's in the wilderness the last part of the tribulation for 1,260 days or 3.5 years. But in verse 4, you have, and the dragon stood before the woman, Israel, who was ready to give birth to devour a child as soon as it was born. That child, with the dragon standing before the child, before the woman, Israel, again, is prior to the destruction of Jerusalem. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies or the dragon standing before the woman, then you know that the desolation is near, the abomination of desolation. And then in verse 6, then the woman fled into the wilderness, and she flees into the wilderness when the abomination of desolation occurs at the revealing of the man of perdition. So in Daniel 9, verses 27, and he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week or 7 years, but in the middle of the week, so 3.5 years into it, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wings of abomination shall be one who makes desolate. So we know that the Antichrist breaks the covenant in the middle of the week, and this is when the woman flees into the wilderness, and that's when the abomination of desolation occurs. So now going back to the second sign, which is the great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his heads. This is a little bit tougher to discern in the heavens, but a little bit easier to discern in Scripture who this is. So this is in fact Satan giving his power and authority to the beast system, which is the beast from the sea, later on being the beast from the earth when the Antichrist then rules. So just covering the red dragon based on Scripture and not looking for the heavenly sign. Let's go back and review. So Revelation 12, verses 3, and there appeared another wonder or second sign in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. And if you look at Revelation 12, the beast from the sea, Revelation 13, verses 1 and 2, and it says, Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and this is John, the Revelator, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast that I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him, and that's the beast from the sea, his power, his throne, and great authority. So the dragon that you see in Revelation 12, verses 3, the second sign, after Revelation 12, verses 1 and 2, which occurred on September 23rd. So you know after that date, but before the middle of the tribulation, which is on March 6th, 2021, if you go 1,260 days from September 23rd, you know that it occurs between that time period, but I think it occurs during the week of Tabernacles coming up in October in a couple of weeks. But you see that the red dragon described in Revelation 12, verses 3, has 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns. But the dragon gives the beast from the sea, mentioned in Revelation 13, all his power, his throne, and great authority. And this beast has 7 heads and 10 horns, just like the red dragon. But on his horns, he has 10 crowns. This one has 7 crowns, though. So that's the only difference. But they're basically one and the same. And when the 10 crowns, with 3 being fallen, when the Antichrist, the little horn, comes into play, mentioned in Daniel, then this will go from 10 down to 7 crowns. So these two entities, the red dragon and the beast from the sea, will be one and the same. But that's when the Antichrist comes into reign. And so throughout Revelation, we're even given more information about this beast from the sea. It says on his head, he has a blasphemous name. So you see in Revelation 17, verses 3, that, and I saw a woman, which is the harlot, sitting on a scarlet beast or a red beast, which is full of names of blasphemy, which is one and the same, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So the beast from the sea and the scarlet beast that the harlot is riding is one and the same beast. And this is the beast that the dragon gave authority to. And it goes on to say in Revelation 17, verses 12 and 13, it says, "The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet." So they have no crowns at that point, but they exist. But they have received authority for 1 hour as kings. So now they're crowned with the beast. So now at this point, the scarlet beast has 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns upon its head. And it says, "These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast." So these 10 kings will give their power and authority to the beast. So this is the beast from the sea for 1 hour. And so at this point, there's 10 crowns. So for 1 hour, they have crowns with the beast. And interestingly enough, the Babylon is utterly destroyed in 1 hour. So I believe the hour that these 10 horns or these 10 kings receive their kingdom, that they then are crowned with the beast from the sea, and they're like-minded with the beast from the sea. So in this 1 hour, this is when the beast from the sea with the 10 kings utterly burn and destroy Babylon, the harlot. So at that point, the scarlet beast, who's being ridden by the harlot, no longer has her dominion and her power over the beast. So that's when I believe Babylon in that 1 hour, and then at that time, the Antichrist comes into reign. So doing a side-by-side comparison of the red dragon and the scarlet beast, or the beast from the sea, you have a red dragon, and this is in Revelation 12, verses 3, the second sign, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns. But the dragon gives his power, his throne, and his great authority to the beast, which is the beast from the sea, which is also the scarlet beast. And so the scarlet beast described in Revelation 17 is a scarlet or red beast that's just like the red dragon, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 10 crowns for 1 hour. So the scarlet beast that takes out Babylon, the mystery Babylon, the harlot. But 3 fall when the Antichrist comes into power. So then it goes from 10 crowns down to 7 crowns. And this is mentioned in Daniel 7:20. It says, "And the 10 horns that were on his head," it's talking about the beast, "and another horn which came up," which is the little horn or the Antichrist, which it referred to earlier in Daniel 7, "before which 3 fell." So it goes from 10 horns down to 7 horns when the 3 fall, with the Antichrist rising up, the little horn. "Namely, that horn, or the Antichrist, which had eyes in a mouth, which spake pompous words or blasphemous words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows." So when the little horn comes up, or the Antichrist, 3 horns fall, or 3 kings fall. And so it goes from 10 crowns down to 7 crowns at that point in time. So then these become one and the same. The scarlet beast in Revelation 17 will then there'll be a red beast with 7 heads, 10 horns, and now 7 crowns, with blasphemous names because he's speaking pompous words. This is one and the same as the red dragon. A red dragon, 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns. But this dragon gave his authority to the beast. But before the Antichrist comes into full power, you have the 10 kings or 10 crowns at that point. And these are those that receive authority for 1 hour as kings. So 10 crowns with the beast. And that's with the beast from the sea. And so during this 1 hour, they have crowns. And I believe this is the same 1 hour that Babylon is utterly burned. So in Revelation 18, you see that in verse 10, alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. And so that's the same 1 hour that the 10 kings, along with the beast from the sea, utterly burn Babylon the Great. So when does Babylon the Great fall? So it falls at the second angel's proclamation in Revelation 14. And it mentions in Revelation 14, verses 8 through 9, that the second angel states that Babylon is fallen, is fallen. And you can go back and look at these verses for yourself. So Babylon falls before the Antichrist rules and reigns the beast system. So this occurs before the abomination of desolation or before the middle of Daniel's 70th week and or the middle of the tribulation. But and then the third angel's proclamation warns against worshiping the beast and his image or receiving his mark on your forehead or on your hand. So that, but Babylon falls before the Antichrist goes into full reign with the beast, with having to worship the Antichrist. So I'm noticing that some of the channels are saying that the day of the Lord occurs before the tribulation, before Daniel's 70th week, and this can't be the case because it says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3, let no one deceive you by any means, for that day, which is the day of the Lord, will not come unless the falling away comes first. So that has to occur first before the day of the Lord. And the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition. And the man of sin or the son of perdition is not revealed until the abomination of desolation occurs. So that's a mid-trib or middle of Daniel's week. And then the day of the Lord can occur. So it's sometime at least from the middle of the tribulation going forward. But you also see that the woman flees from Israel into the wilderness during that same time. So when the abomination of desolation occurs and the man of perdition stands where he ought not, that's when the woman, Israel, flees into the wilderness. And this is described in Revelation 12, verses 6. And then the day of the Lord occurs. So we know all the events with the second sign, with the great fiery red dragon, and the dragon casting 1/3 of the stars to the earth, and the man-child being caught up to God into his throne occurs before the middle of Daniel's 70th week, because it says in verse 6, then the woman flees into the wilderness, and we know that's a mid-trib event. So with verses 1 and 2 occurring on September 23rd, 1,260 days later, the woman flees into the wilderness for another 1,260 days. This completes the full 7 years of the tribulation, being 2,520 days. So verses 1 through 6 of Revelation 12 has to occur before March 6th of 2021. Looking at the time date calculator, here's September 23rd, which is the Revelation 12 sign in verses 1 and 2. You add 1,260 days, which is the middle of Daniel's 70th week. You come up with Saturday, March 6th of 2021. And this is the time period in which the woman flees into the wilderness, in which the Antichrist is revealed, and the beast system, along with the Antichrist reign, comes into play. And that's when it becomes the 7 heads, 10 horns and 7 crowns. And before this time period, between September 23rd and March 6th of 2021, Babylon falls during this first 3.5-year period of time. And again, the day of the Lord cannot occur and the son of perdition is revealed. And that's at the same time the woman flees into the wilderness. That's again mentioned in Revelation 12, verses 6. And then the day of the Lord can happen at that point going forward. So that's from March 6th of 2021. If you assume that September 23rd, 2017, just 3 days ago, was the beginning of the tribulation. So in my personal opinion, I believe that when the dragon's tail casts 1/3 of the stars of heaven and throws them to the earth, I believe this is the event in which Babylon is taken out. And I believe that Mystery Babylon, or Babylon the Great, is the United States, and that this event is in fact a nuclear event in which the United States is utterly burned in 1 hour. That's the only plausible event that would cause the United States to fall in that time period. And in fact, Putin has said in the fact that he believes that he could do it in half that time, in 30 minutes. So it takes a conglomeration of 10 kings along with the beast with 10 other countries. It takes that type of manpower for the United States Mystery Babylon to be utterly burned. And if you assume 1/3 of the stars being 1/3 of Russia's arsenal, they have 7,000 nukes that are reported publicly. So 1/3 of that is a little bit over 2,000 nukes, and that could definitely take out the United States. And then at that point, the dragon can stand before the woman Israel, or the beast government can stand before the woman or stand before Israel because we're Israel's greatest ally. So with the United States out of the way, you can then invade or stand before Israel. And I believe this is then in fulfillment of Luke 21:20, again saying, Christ saying, but when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, and I believe that's the beast government, the beast system, then you know that the abomination of desolation is near. So I believe that Babylon falls, that Jerusalem is surrounded by the armies around the desolation, abomination of desolation. So the middle of Daniel's 70th week. So 3.5 years from this point, assuming that the Revelation 12 sign was the beginning of the tribulation or Daniel's 70th week, then all these things occur, and then the woman flees into the wilderness, and that fulfills verses 6. Then the woman fled into the wilderness. But before that, she bore a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God into his throne. So again, I believe that the man-child is not the bride. The bride is a woman, a female, the man-child being Christ. And again, that it shows the rod of iron. These all these 4 verses, the one mentioned in Psalms 2 and the 3 places in Revelation, all refer to Jesus Christ. And in Revelation 19:15, it says, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. And that's talking about Jesus Christ. And looking at Revelation 19, verses 15, this is when, and he himself, which is Jesus Christ, will rule them with a rod of iron. And that's the nations. So Jesus Christ will rule the nations with a rod of iron. So this is when Christ comes on the horse at the end, and this is when the beast and his armies are defeated. So this is towards the end of the 7-year tribulation, or Daniel's 70th week. So he himself rules with a rod of iron. So if you go back now to Revelation 12, the child that's caught up to God into the throne, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, to defeat the armies of Satan at the end of the 7-year tribulation. So I believe this is coming up actually in the next couple of weeks. Do I know that for a fact? No, but let me show you what's occurring in the heavens. So on October 9th, 2017, so in a couple of weeks, you have both the dragon anomaly that you probably have seen on Dabu 777's channel, is standing before the child Jupiter, while the fiery red dragon, or the sun, stands before the child Mercury on the very same day on October 9th, 2017, of where this is currently. You can look at Google Sky and see its coordinates. So it's actually approximately about this position. And these occur at the same time on October 9th, 2017. Incidentally, the dragon casting 1/3 of the stars, so on heaven as it is on earth, according to the Lord's Prayer, between October 7th and October 9th is the Draconid meteor shower. So the Draconid meteor shower emanating from the constellation Draco, which is the dragon, and this occurring on the 9th. This is in the exact sequence that's mentioned in Revelation 12, verses 3 through 5, in which the second sign is the dragon. Then the dragon casts 1/3 of the stars of heaven to the earth with its tail, and then it stands before the woman, Virgo. And so it is on October 9th. So the Draconid meteor shower occurs a couple of days between the 7th through the 9th at this time. And then at the same time, on the same date, the dragon anomaly is positioned before Jupiter in the heavens, and the sun, or the fiery red dragon, if you can see that symbolism, standing before Mercury. So you're saying, well, now there's two children. I thought it was just Jupiter that was in the womb for 9 months, and then Mercury enters at that time. Well, I think this is in accordance and in fulfillment of Acts 14:12, which states, "And they called Barnabas Jupiter and Paul Mercurius, or Mercury, because he was the chief speaker." And Barnabas was a Jewish apostle that they elected to be part of the 12 apostles after Judas Iscariot hung himself. And then Paul, we know, is a Gentile. So I believe this is representative that Jupiter being the Jews, of which the dragon stands before Jerusalem, per Luke 21:20. But Paul is also the Gentiles, represents the Gentiles, is also taken out too by the dragon, which is, in my opinion, Mystery Babylon, or the United States, in which the majority of Christians live in the United States and are the Gentiles as well. So Mystery Babylon, the United States, and stands before Israel at that time, because her greatest ally, the United States, is no longer in existence, been utterly burned in 1 hour. And so then that goes to this being the army surrounded. But this occurs near the abomination of desolation, the middle of the tribulation. So there is a discrepancy, in my opinion, between what's being shown in the heavens and when it actually physically occurs on the timeline. So are we going into the middle of the tribulation? Was the Revelation 12 sign a sign of a mid-trib sign, and then the tetrad blood moons were the beginning? I don't know. Or are the signs in the heaven a precursor of things to come later? Maybe, the Revelation 12 sign could be both an indication that it is the beginning or the middle of the tribulation, as well as Christ's soon second coming. So we'll soon know, I believe, after Tabernacles, when all these things will be, those dates will have passed, and we'll soon see by the end of Tabernacles, which ends October 12th, and the 8th day is October 13th of this year, whether these things, we'll know whether 1/3 of the stars are cast to the earth by that time, especially being in the United States in a couple of weeks, or whether those are just signs in the heavens of future events that will come into fruition, but they will in fact occur then 3.5 years down the line. So I just wanted to bring this to you. I haven't put out a video in a long time. So I believe Revelation 12 verses 1 through 6 occurs in a 3.5 year period of time, with this in fact being on September 23rd for verses 1 and 2, And then the woman fleeing into the wilderness will be 3.5 years from now. Or this could be a middle tribulation event, but there's a lot of things that have to occur. And so I believe we're going into the tribulation, and that the signs in the heaven are just signs that are showing things that will occur in the future. That will, of course, be shown soon enough or not. That all remains to be seen, and we'll know for sure with more surety, I'll say, in the next couple of weeks. But in my personal opinion, I do not believe that there will be a rapture on the Day of Atonement, nor during Tabernacles. I believe that we're going into the tribulation, and that all these things that are mentioned in verses 1 through 6 will occur within the first 1,260 days. And then the woman going to a place prepared by God for the second half of the Daniel 70th week for another 1,260 days. So I believe that the child that's caught up to God into the throne, I had previously thought it was the 144,000, but I don't think it's the bride, because the gender is not, it's not a female, it's a male child. And the only 4 places in the Bible that mentions rod of iron are associated with Jesus Christ. So I don't think, in my opinion, that it's the church being raptured. So anyhow, I wanted to bring this to you, and I hope you guys are having a blessed week. We're now possibly, I won't say officially, possibly 3 days into the tribulation. And so it's a critical time if that in fact is the case. So please get your houses in order. We don't know if these events are going to occur in the next couple of weeks, as it's shown in the heavens, that it's like 1 for 1, or there are signs of future events. So who's to say? Only God knows. And then the rapture, I believe only God knows the day or the hour, and he comes at a day you think not. But the day of the Lord, that is in fact after the abomination of desolation, when the falling away occurs and the man of sin is revealed. So it's a little bit down the road from now. So anyways, but please get your houses in order. This is a crucial time in history. I believe we're in the end times, as most of you believe too. And if you aren't saved, we are in a critical time in history, in Bible history, that it's time to get your house and your life in order, as Jesus Christ is soon coming. As I do believe that the Revelation 12 sign that occurred on September 23rd, a few days ago, is in fact a sign of his second coming soon, as it emulated almost exactly his first coming over 2,000 years ago. So anyways, I hope you guys are having a blessed week, and I hope this video has been beneficial to you, and I will talk to you soon.